This red M is a symbol anyone who has been to Moscow should recognize. The Moscow Metropolitan is used by millions of people daily, and usually is the most convenient way of getting around, especially in bad weather or when there's heavy traffic, to which Moscow is no stranger. I myself used the system extensively for many, many years, to the point where I knew, and I still know in a lot of cases, exactly which part of the train to get onto if I want to make a really fast and efficient transfer, or if I want to pop out of the city at a very specific point to get to the desired street. But despite all that, and I thought I knew the city very, very well because I had effectively memorized this underground labyrinth. But it ended up being a situation where I had just massive literal holes in my geographic knowledge of the city because I just didn't know what was going on above ground. I was extremely skilled at getting from point A to point B, but what was there in between those points? What was there beyond the destination? Now, in the years since COVID, and especially after the start of the war, I've been working to expand my knowledge of the city above ground more and more. That in the beginning took the form of just biking around the city, but I've been going more and more on foot. And what I intend to do with, well, these series of videos that this is the first of, is try to motivate myself to go to parts of the city that I might not normally go to otherwise. I'll explain the process for choosing that in a little bit, but I'm going to bring you along. I'm going to document all of this. I'm going to record it so that I can share this all with you as well. So it's kind of a two birds with one stone. You guys get to see some parts of the city, and I'm also kind of pushing myself to go to places to see things and do things that I might not otherwise. So once a metro station has been chosen as a destination, and I'll get into the methodology for doing that just in a little bit, what am I actually going to be showing you? Well, I will show you briefly the trip from my own metro station here in the city, that's Lomonovsky Prospect behind me, and to the destination. I'll show you kind of the interchanges and little snippets of how that trip is supposed to go. When we actually get to the destination, the predetermined metro station, I will focus in a little bit on what that actually looks like on the inside and from the outside, if there's any sort of interesting architecture to be had within the metro and with the vestibules themselves. But then what happens when we get out on the streets? Because that's realistically the main idea of all of this. Well, I will definitely do some research before getting there, try to find some interesting historical facts or stories or maybe personalities connected to that part of the city. Obviously, if I have any personal stories or anecdotes connected to that part of the city, I will be sure to share them with you as well. But I think for the most part, I'm just going to go and wander. I think there's just a huge part of the city still to this day that I just have not experienced, and I kind of want to discover it for the first time and take you along in that process as well. And while walking around the city is kind of interesting in its own regard, I do think it's important to try to highlight a little bit what life might be like in that area. One of the ways of doing so is going to be connected to food, because we all eat, and that's one of the activities that we often do when we're outside of the house. So I'm going to try to find a place to grab a coffee and a pastry in each area, some street food, most likely in the form of shawarma, and then possibly a place to grab dinner. I say possibly with that last one just because I don't eat a lot, and so cramming in kind of 3 meals in a day is something I don't typically do, but I will do my best to squeeze it in on the days that I go out filming for that. Now, I do want to clarify too that when it comes to finding places to eat, I'm not going to go to franchise restaurants or things like that. I want to try to find places that are unique for a given area. There might be some small exceptions to that if there are some small franchises that only have like 3 or 4 locations around the city, but I still want to try to find what in Russian you would call probably like местный колорит, the sort of local flavor, what makes something kind of unique and special to that very region, just because I think that's important and I do want to highlight it, and it's just also kind of interesting. It's a chance to get out there and explore and maybe find something interesting that other people don't really know much about in the city. And honestly, shawarma, I love shawarma, but I'll be going into more detail in all of this in future videos. Now, beyond that, if there are any parks in the region, obviously I'm going to be featuring those, because in a big city like Moscow, parks are always super important, especially for the people who live in a specific area. Those green spaces are vital, and there's something that I love as well. And then I think even beyond that, when we get beyond the parks, if there are other means of transport, whether that be buses or things of that nature, I'm going to highlight that as well. I actually have this idea where if it's not too far from my part of the city where I live, my own metro station, then perhaps on the way back from the destination, I'll try to take above ground transit just so you can get a better idea of how the city is connected via the road network as well. Now that I've got that all said, I'm back home and I gotta go into some details here so I can really let you know how I envision this whole setup working. Currently, there are 276 stations in the Moscow Metro, if my counting was correct, though that number does increase by a few every single year. You can actually see the 17th line of the Metro being constructed as we speak. A few of those stations will be added to the 276 by the end of this year, 2026. So it is a bit of a massive undertaking here. However, I do want to add a bit of a caveat while we are looking at this map. You might see some lines like the D1 line here, or the D4 line here as well, or this big red circular line. These are not going to be under consideration, mainly because these are above ground trains. The big red line is the MCK, the Moscow Central Ring, and the D1, D2, D3, D4 lines. These are all the MCDs, the Moscow Central Diameters. Because they are not technically part of the metro system, I will not be including them in this series of videos that I'm going to be working on, even though, all things considered, they are part of the Moscow public transit system. So, all of that said, how am I going to decide which of the 276 stations to go to? There's just too many of them. Well, I put the name of every single station in the Moscow Metro in alphabetical order into a giant wheel, which I will then be able to give a spin, and whichever station the arrow stops on will be my destination. Now, in some instances, like I have here with Kievskaya, stations have multiple lines converging at one point. And, for example, Kievskaya here has the brown ring line, the dark blue Arbatsko-Pokrovskaya linia, and then the light blue Filyovskaya linia. And so when multiple lines intersect at a single point, I'm going to put the name of that station on the wheel as many times as there are technically stations for it. Because as I feel, places with multiple transfers means that there are more people and more traffic and probably more important things to look at and experience in those areas, meaning that it being on the wheel multiple times gives me a greater opportunity. It means I'll be likely to come back to it in the future to see more and explore more in the region. And I won't feel the need to cram everything into a single trip. But we'll be spinning this wheel soon enough, but not quite yet. Now, once a station has been chosen by the wheel, how will I determine what to explore in the area around that metro station? Well, what I'm going to do is I'm going to place a pin on a map here in the area of that metro station. Let's take, for example, Metro Kievskaya. We're just going to put it right here. That's approximately where it would be underground. And the radius of the circle is going to be 1 kilometer. The reason for that is because the average distance between stations, if I remember correctly, due to the space required for the train to accelerate to its maximum speed and then slow down, is about 1 kilometer. And this circle is almost certainly going to overlap with some other circles. We can put the Smolenskaya station down. We'll put it right here, for example, right? There is going to be some overlap between these metro stations in the same way that we could add, for example, metro station not Arbatskaya, Park Kultury. We'll put it right here, right? Especially in the center, there's going to be a lot of overlap. As we get further out, there's going to be less so, but still. What I am going to be focused on is the part of the circle that does not overlap with anything else. So for example, with metro station, say Kievskaya, it would be focused on this area around the train station and probably over here along Kutuzovsky Avenue, Kutuzovsky Prospect, as you might see. I will do a better job of highlighting this with the station before I actually go to it. But you'll see more of that in future videos. This is how it's going to work out, and this is how we're going to determine which parts of these circles to focus our attention most on. That's not to say that we won't go into those areas where there is some overlap, it's just they are not going to be the focus of attention. Okay, now that I have explained how I see these videos working and the logic behind all of them, the only thing that's left for us to do is spin the wheel. So let's do that right now and find out where we will be headed on our first adventure. What do we get? Krasnoselskaya. Krasnoselskaya is a good one. I like that one a lot. I was actually out there not too long ago, a few months ago. Some very interesting stuff out in that area. I think that's a really good place to start. So I couldn't be more pleased with that choice. So excellent. So there you have it. The first destination that we are going to be off to is Krasnoselskaya. So looking forward to that. If you are excited about the first exploration or you just kind of enjoyed the concept, be sure to leave a comment down below this video. Leave a like as well. I am going to be trying to do more of this throughout the next 6 or so months while weather is permitting. Obviously, this is something that I could do during the winter, but with it kind of being colder and darker and honestly a little bit more dreary, I do think that this is one of those video ideas that I'm going to try to do frequently when the weather permits, and then it'll kind of just go into hibernation come next winter. But seeing as we are going into spring right now, there's gonna be lots of opportunities for me to get out there and film, and I've got lots of other ideas cooking with regards to other activities or fun concepts that we can do here around the city so that I can share my knowledge of Moscow and Russia with you, and so that you can also get a bit of an experience or get to see some stuff that you might not otherwise. But yeah, like I said, leave a comment, leave a like, and I'll be back in the very near future, either sharing you part of this city or sharing you some news or some new music on a stream, or who knows, maybe even just another video about something else. I have no idea, but everyone, have a good evening, good afternoon, whatever time of the day it happens to be when you are watching this. I will see you when I see you, but until then, this has been Russia in Context. Thanks for watching.